Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we exploring today?
Well, this time, it's something I think most people try to avoid.
Oh, sounds intriguing already.
Yeah, we're going deep into the depths of YouTube's terms of service.
Ah, the infamous document nobody reads?
Exactly. But it's actually a pretty important document. I mean, it governs how billions of people use this platform.
That's true. It's like the rule book for the entire YouTube universe.
Right. We're looking at the version from January 5, 2022.
Okay, so fairly recent then.
Yeah. And, honestly, there's some really surprising stuff in there. Stuff I bet most people have no clue about.
Like what? Give me a teaser.
Well, for example, did you know that by uploading, let's say, your cat video, you're basically giving YouTube permission to make money from it?
Interesting. So they could be profiting off my cat's cuteness without cutting me in.
Potentially, yeah. We'll dig into that more later. And then there's the whole question of what happens to your content if your account gets suspended.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Do they just delete everything?
Not necessarily. And we'll also unpack the community guidelines strikes system.
Those little warnings that can really mess with your channel.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as your guide to navigating the legal jungle of YouTube.
Sounds like a survival guide for the digital age.
Pretty much. Oh, okay, so let's start with the document itself. It's actually pretty well structured. It covers things like who can use YouTube and who provides the service.
Which, in the UK, is Google LLC, right?
Yep, no big surprise there.
Yeah.
And then there are separate rules for advertising on YouTube.
Right, if you're using the platform for business purposes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the core of the document is really about user content.
Making sure it complies with their rules and all that.
Right, and there are a lot of rules. They have age restrictions, and, anyone under 18 needs parental consent.
Trying to keep things safe for everyone.
Yeah. But the section that really gets interesting, at least to me, is your content and conduct section.
Ah, the battleground between user freedom and platform control.
Exactly. So basically, when you upload content, you're granting YouTube certain licenses to use it.
Right, like permissions to share and distribute it.
But here's the thing. How long do those licenses actually last?
That's the catch. Even if you delete your video, YouTube can actually keep a copy for legal reasons.
So even if you try to erase your digital footprint, it might still be there, lurking in their servers.
Potentially, yes. It highlights the control they have over user content.
Makes you think twice about what you upload, right? Okay, so then there's the big question of monetization. Are they saying they can just put ads on my videos and potentially profit from them without giving me a share?
Well, the agreement itself doesn't automatically guarantee any payment unless you're part of the YouTube Partner Program, which has its own separate terms.
Right, the partner program is a whole other beast.
Exactly. But this document basically sets the baseline for how they can use your content, and monetization is definitely part of that equation.
So let's say I post a video that goes viral, and they're making money from it with ads, but I'm not in the partner program. Am I just out of luck?
That's a possibility, yes. Although, if you're generating revenue through other agreements with YouTube, it's a different story.
Right, so the partner program changes things. Okay, but what if I decide I don't want my content on there anymore? Can I just take it down?
You absolutely have the right to remove your content whenever you want. You can even make a copy of it before you take it down.
Good to know. But I guess based on what we talked about earlier, YouTube might still keep a copy.
Yes. For legal purposes, they can retain copies. And, of course, there's the flip side. YouTube can also remove content if they think it violates their terms.
Right, like if it's copyrighted material or something illegal.
Exactly. They're responsible for, keeping the platform relatively safe and legal.
So if they remove something, do they at least tell you why?
They usually notify you, yeah. But there are exceptions, like if there's a legal investigation going on or if there's an immediate risk of harm.
Okay, so there are situations where they might act quickly and silently. But, what if you think they removed something by mistake? Can you appeal that?
Absolutely. YouTube has a system for addressing those situations. You can find more information in their help center.
Okay, good to know. But speaking of potential trouble, let's talk about those community guideline strikes. What exactly are those all about?
Well, these strikes are how YouTube deals with content that might not be illegal, but it still violates their community guidelines.
So it's not breaking the law, but it's breaking their rules.
Right. And each strike comes with certain restrictions on your channel. And, if you get multiple strikes, your channel could be permanently removed.
Wow, so it's serious business.
It can be, yes. The severity of the restrictions depends on what you did and how many strikes you've already gotten.
So a first strike might be a slap on the wrist, but a third strike could be game over.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I guess it makes sense. They need a way to, like, enforce their rules and keep the platform from turning into a free-for-all.
Exactly. And they do give you a chance to appeal if you think a strike was unfair.
So there's hope for redemption.
There's always hope. But, this all makes me wonder, what if you do get a strike and your channel's restricted? Can you just create a new channel and start over?
Trying to game the system.
Right, but that's a big no-no. They consider that a serious breach of the agreement and could actually terminate your entire Google account.
Wow, so they're not messing around.
Nope. They take these things seriously. It wouldn't be much of a system if people could just dodge the consequences like that. But, this brings up another interesting point. What about account suspension or termination? When does that happen?
Right, like what triggers that kind of action?
Well, both you and YouTube can end the agreement. You can choose to just stop using the service and delete your account.
So it's like a mutual breakup.
Sort of. Or YouTube can terminate your account for things like repeated violations of the agreement, legal issues, or if your behavior is deemed harmful.
So if I'm constantly posting copyrighted material or promoting something illegal, they can shut me down.
Yes, they definitely have the power to do that. And in those cases, they will usually let you know about the termination or suspension.
But are there ever times when they wouldn't notify you?
There are exceptions, yeah. Like if it's part of a legal investigation or there's an immediate danger, they might not give you a heads up. But in most cases, they try to be clear about their actions.
So they try to communicate, but they also have the right to act swiftly if needed. Okay, but what actually happens if your account gets suspended or terminated? Are you completely locked out of YouTube?
It depends, really. If it's your whole Google account that's gone, then yeah, you're pretty much done. But if it's just a suspension or a restriction on your YouTube access, you might still be able to watch videos, just not upload or comment.
So you might still be able to lurk, but not participate.
Exactly. And remember, even when you're just watching, the terms of service still apply to you.
So those terms are always there, looming over us. But what if you think a termination or suspension was a mistake? Is there any recourse?
They have an appeals process for that too, so there's always a chance to plead your case.
Okay, so there's a bit of a safety net if you feel you've been wronged. This is all making me realize how much I just took these terms for granted. I mean, I never really thought about them much.
It's easy to do that. They seem like just legal mumbo-jumbo that doesn't really apply to us. But as we've seen, these terms have a big impact on how we experience YouTube, both as creators and as viewers.
You're absolutely right. This has been a real eye-opener. We've just scratched the surface, though. There's a lot more to uncover in these terms of service.
Let's dive deeper. Next, we'll explore the legal safeguards YouTube has in place for itself. This is where it gets really interesting. So we've seen how much power YouTube has, when it comes to your content and your account. But now let's look at the legal safeguards they have for themselves.
The legal safeguards. This sounds even more complicated.
It might seem that way, but really it's all about understanding, the legal side of things. There's a section that talks about warranties and liability for both YouTube and its users.
So they're acknowledging that things could go wrong, but they're also trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, exactly. They say they'll provide the service with reasonable care and skill, but they can't guarantee everything.
Like what? What kind of things can't they guarantee?
Well, for example, they don't promise that every video is going to be accurate or reliable or even available all the time. And they're not responsible for, the content other users upload.
So it's like they provide the platform, but they don't control everything on it.
Right. Think of it like a library. They provide the shelves, but they don't check every book for, accuracy.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about liability? Like, if something goes wrong because of something YouTube did, are they responsible?
They address that pretty directly. First, they make it clear that they can't exclude or limit liability for really serious things like death or personal injury, fraud, or anything that's legally non-excludable.
So those are like the big no-nos, the things they can't wiggle out of.
Exactly. But then they go on to say that they're not responsible for a few other things, to the extent permitted by law. For example, they're not liable for any loss or damage that wasn't foreseeable when you agreed to these terms.
So like if I trip over my cat while I'm watching YouTube, It's not their fault.
Well, maybe not that specifically, but you get the idea. They're not responsible for things totally outside of their control. Another big one is they aren't responsible for content submitted by other users.
Right. So they're not liable for every crazy thing people post.
Exactly. It would be impossible for them to police every single video.
It sounds like they've been pretty careful about minimizing their legal risk.
They have. They've thought this through. And there are even more limitations if you're a business using YouTube.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, for example, they're not responsible for lost profits or revenue or data that a business might experience because of something that happens on the platform.
So if a company's video gets taken down and they lose business because of it, YouTube isn't obligated to compensate them.
It really depends on the situation, but yes, the agreement tries to protect YouTube in cases like that. They also cap their total liability for businesses at a certain amount.
They have a limit on how much they could potentially have to pay out.
Right. It's either the revenue they've paid to that user in the past 12 months or £500, whichever is higher.
Okay, so they're clearly trying to protect themselves from major lawsuits. But what about all those links you see in YouTube videos, the ones that take you to other websites? Are they responsible for what's on those sites?
That's a great question, and they address it very directly. They say they have absolutely no control over and no responsibility for any third-party websites that are linked to on YouTube.
So if I click on a link and end up on some sketchy website, it's my own fault.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like if they give you directions to a store, but you decide to wander off into a dark alley. They pointed you in the right direction, but they're not responsible for where you go after that.
Makes sense. You can't hold them responsible for the entire internet. Okay, so they can't control everything that happens on their platform. But can they at least change these terms whenever they want?
They can make changes, yes, but they have to follow some rules. They're obligated to give users reasonable notice before making any big changes to the agreement.
What does that mean, reasonable notice? Do they send out an email or something?
It could be an email, yeah. Or a pop-up message, or a notification on the site. The point is they can't just sneak in changes. They have to actually try to let users know.
And what if you don't like the changes? Do you have any options besides quitting YouTube?
Well, if you don't like the new terms, they basically say you should remove your content and stop using the service.
So it's a take it or leave it situation.
Pretty much. But even if you do leave YouTube, there are some parts of the agreement that still apply even after you delete your account.
Wait, really? Even if you're gone, they still have some control.
There are certain permissions you've already given them that continue on, in certain cases. And there's a part that says, if one part of the agreement isn't enforceable, the rest of it still stands. They've really thought of everything.
It's a pretty impressive legal document. But this brings up another question. What happens if you break the rules, but YouTube doesn't do anything about it right away? Does that mean you're off the hook?
Not necessarily. There's a no waiver clause, which basically means that even if they don't act right away, they can still take action later on.
So you're never really in the clear, even if it seems like they've let something slide.
Right. They're not forgetting about any violations just because they didn't act immediately. And lastly, there's a section that tells you which laws govern the agreement. Here in the UK, it's UK law.
So if there's a legal battle, it would be fought on UK soil.
Exactly. And they mentioned that legal action can be taken in your local courts.
So you wouldn't have to fly to California to fight it out in court?
Probably not. But again, the specifics would depend on what actually happened. This whole deep dive is really making me think about everything that goes into running a platform like YouTube.
Me too. There's so much going on behind the scenes, it's easy to forget.
Right. We tend to just take it for granted. But we've only covered the legal stuff so far. There's still more to explore in these terms of service.
Okay, so what else is hiding in this document?
Next, we'll get into the really technical stuff, the sections about software and intellectual property.
So we've really dug deep into this massive document. I mean, from content ownership to legal battles.
Right.
It's clear that these terms really shape the whole YouTube experience.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that most people just, click agree without even looking at it.
Right. It's like signing a contract without reading it, which is, never a good idea. But now that we've gone through all these details, what does it all really mean for, the everyday person who uses YouTube?
I think it's all about, being aware of the power dynamics. You're basically entering into a deal with a huge company, and it's important to, understand what you're agreeing to before you, upload that next video.
Right. It's their platform, so their rules.
Yeah.
So what are some, key takeaways people should remember?
Well, definitely be careful about what you post.
Hmm.
Remember that YouTube can use your videos to make money, even if you're not a part of the partner program.
Yeah.
And be aware of those community guidelines.
Yeah, those strikes can really mess things up.
Right. And even if you delete your content, YouTube might keep a copy. It's like they have this massive digital archive of everything.
Like a library of
Wow.
every video ever uploaded.
Uh,
So speaking of, the stuff YouTube controls, there's this section about downloadable software.
oh, yeah, like YouTube Studio, which a lot of creators use.
Right. What do they say about that?
Well, basically, they give you like a license to use the software, but you can't, mess with the code or try to figure out how it works.
Right, so they're protecting their technology.
Exactly. They don't want anyone, hacking or making unauthorized changes. But if they use any open source software, they're upfront about that too, and they provide, the appropriate license.
So they're playing fair when it comes to open source. Okay, so overall, it seems like YouTube has a lot of control in this whole thing. They can take down videos, suspend accounts, and even change the rules whenever they want.
Yeah, they do have a lot of power. But, that doesn't mean that users are completely powerless. If you understand the terms, you can navigate the platform better and protect yourself.
So it all comes back to being informed and making good choices. Don't just click agree without actually taking the time to understand what you're agreeing to.
Exactly. The more you know about the rules, the better off you'll be.
This deep dive has really made me see YouTube in a whole new light. It's not just funny videos anymore. It's a complicated system.
And those rules really do matter. They affect everyone who uses the platform. So, next time you're on YouTube, think about those terms. Are you okay with how they operate?
That's a great question. Not just for YouTube, but for every website and app we use. Are we really, paying attention to what we're agreeing to online?
It's easy to just, go along with it, but it's important to start asking questions and demanding more transparency from these companies that have so much control over our digital lives.
This has been a real eye-opener. It's time to start, taking control of our digital lives. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.